This is Larry Culpepper. I love college football so much that I went ahead and came up with the idea of the playoff for it. And the only way I can get ready for each and every Saturday of college football is by listening to the Championship Drive podcast.
This is the best of the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
It's Amin in Spain. Spain coming off a week in Bristol, and I don't know what state I'm in or what time it is. Amin hungover from a late night with Mike in South Beach. Where'd you guys go, Amin?
I don't get hangovers, first of all. I've never had a hangover in my life.
Is that an actual thing, or is this like you, like you saying, "I don't, the heat doesn't touch me. I'm Teflon done."
I first of all, it doesn't. But I've actually never had a hangover in my life. Like, that's not to say I've never been physically ill, but I've never woken up the next day with a headache, or like, oh, it's too bright in here, or just give me a cup of coffee in about 45 minutes before you talk to me. I've never had any of those. Like, I wake up the next day.
So what do you think being physically ill is?
No, I'm talking about the night of, not the next morning.
Oh, so even if you can boot the night before and you wake up feeling fine?
Yeah.
I don't buy it, man. Maybe you're constantly living in a state of...
Mike, how do I look right now?
Like $1 million, dude.
Dude, you're telling someone takes red-eye flights, walks into the studio mid-show, and jumps in and gives you Homeland references.
Yeah, jumps in and turns everything down 100 notches immediately. Yeah. Wait, I just don't believe you. I'm sorry to say that. I don't really care if you look like you feel like $1 million. We can all hide it. I'm curious as to whether you think you have some sort of unique genetic makeup that allows for you not to get... Basically, what it usually is a combination of dehydrated and like an odd sugar thing happening within you.
I have a really, really, really high metabolism. As you could probably tell looking at me.
So everything just gets processed and it's out?
Very quickly, yep.
How often do you boot?
Not as much as I used to, just because I don't have enough time.
Okay, so that sounds like a lot.
What's that mean?
Well, like if you said almost never, once a year, but like not as much as I used to sounds like a lot.
What define boot?
Throw up.
Oh, no. Not like maybe like once a year.
So how much are we drinking when we go out with Mike Ryan in South Beach?
Not like last night, not at all.
Yeah. No, well, like that's why you're not hungover. Start with that.
Yeah, no, last night wasn't one of those nights. Oh. Yeah, last night was just, have a Miller Lite, exchange some war stories. See you later.
Have a Miller Lite.
I don't support brands that don't support me in my pocket, Mike, or the show.
Yo,
is this show sponsor?
Yo, it's great taste, less filling, triple hops brewed.
Right. Who does support you? I want to know which brands do support you, so that when you're talking about them, we know that you're doing it because you're getting paid.
Oh, no, I can't say that.
Right, exactly.
It's got to be native advertising,
right,
Sarah.
Yeah. Get yourself in trouble.
Let me pull my MBA out and put it on the table, and let's start talking about
right.
marketing initiatives.
Speaking of NBA, were you guys at the Heat game?
We were. That's why we went out afterward.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you guys just like to hang out whenever you're in town. Maybe it doesn't have to be about basketball games.
It's always
maybe
about
it's
basketball.
about friendship.
It's about basketball, Sarah. It's always
maybe
about
it's
them
about friendship.
Our friendship is only built on basketball.
Predicated on the love of basketball.
The love of basketball. That's the tie that binds you together.
If Mike Ryan was just the same way he is, but replace his Miami Heat fandom with Marlins, I would literally
talk to you. You wouldn't be co-hosting. None of that.
That's so funny because that's like how I feel like if Amin wasn't working at ESPN and they didn't tell me I had to host with him, I would never talk to him.
Fair.
That's all uncomfortable. You mean I feel like you have this in common? You have our show. Like you can talk about our show if you bump in the halls.
That's true.
You've actually have you guys ever met?
Have you? What do you mean you?
It doesn't sound like you've met.
It
sounds like you're strangers. You know what? You're not strangers because Sarah is like super comfortable.
Is she strangers with anyone?
First of all, I'll insult strangers I've just met and people I've known forever. So we could be best friends for all you know.
Cool.
I actually insult people I've known forever a lot harder than I do strangers.
Right. Oh. Wait, I want to hear about the game though. I want to hear about the Shaq ceremony. Was it everything you imagined it would be?
No. So no. Yesterday on the show, they were having the conversation about Shaq's importance to this franchise, whether he should have his jersey retired, yada yada yada. And I was saying that, of course, and I made a very compelling argument about Shaq changing the perception of this town. This used to be a nice road trip stop, and now people look at it as one of the marquee NBA power cities, even when the team isn't good. And I said, Shaq changed that. They didn't have that perception before Shaq was here. And so, whereas Mike and Dan, and they were all saying, well, the emotional connection isn't there in the city. And when people think of that championship, they think about Wade. They don't think about Shaq, to which I thought that was kind of ridiculous because Wade was only able to be great because of Shaq. And then I went to the ceremony last night and I realized I'm still right factually, but they were right in terms of the city was not ready to honor this guy because
the way Miami was reacting to him.
Yeah, it just felt like golf claps and really polite applause.
Yeah, Sarah, it was pretty hollow. Like the loudest ovations of his speech was when he brought up Udonis Haslem and he brought up Alonzo Mourning and he mentioned Dwayne Wade because for the fans those are the real emotional connection points. Shaq is a mercenary. He's one of the game's greatest players, but he's played for a billion teams.
Right,
and
that's what I was going to say.
He's a unique talent in that way.
And it's not because of a personality default. Like, he is a huge personality. He's the guy that you would remember, when he showed up for the first time with the diesel-powered truck and when he had these, funny one-liners. It wasn't a guy that was lacking for interest, but what you're saying is that he came in, he wasn't there long enough, he didn't stick around long enough for people to then think of him as part of the fabric of the team.
And also, and Sarah, the ending is kind of important here because, for Heat fans, that championship, word association, Dwayne Wade. Yes, I know there are basketball reasons why Dwayne excelled, some officiating reasons as well, but that's the Dwayne Wade NBA Finals. Remember how we were talking about Dwayne Wade after those finals? Right. This is the next Michael Jordan. So 2006 Dwayne Wade word association. When you think Shaq, you think Chris Quinn and him torching the franchise on his way out and it being super ugly. That's as much his legacy as his welcome with a super soaker and a diesel powered truck saying he's going to bring a title, which he delivered on.
The telltale sign was last night. The loudest applause happened when Shaq saying I had a great time here, and he tells the story about watching Dwayne Wade play and say this guy's going to be a star and all that. The loudest cheer all night, Mike, you can back me up on this, was when he said, I'd like to call up one of my favorite players of all time, Udonis Haslem, who had come out of the locker room after halftime. He brought him out to the podium and he said, your jersey will hang here today, one day as well. And the crowd went nuts when he did that.
Yeah, it was, I was talking with Amin after the game and I was like, I think I kind of misinterpreted that as a classy move. When it was really an oddly pandering slash self-aware move. And you know what? Self-awareness for Shaq doesn't always come easy for him.
Well, absolutely. Well, and he mentioned Dwayne Wade and saying, I didn't really have a great finals. Dwayne Wade stepped up.
Yeah.
He was so it sounds like maybe either he knew coming in that it was going to be this way, or he read the vibe in the room and he was like, oh.
Let me tell you something.
This isn't what I expected. Let me start tossing things out to others to try to get the crowd on my side.
Shaq is incredibly self-aware.
Really?
He's incredibly self-aware.
Is that why he's so sensitive?
He's part of that is the shtick, right? And part of that is his way of manipulating people and narratives. He's excellent at. I actually joked a long time ago that when he was done playing, he should just go into wrestling, not as a wrestler, but as one of the writers.
Amazing.
One of the writers, one of like someone with creative process involvement there, because he knows exactly how to play that whole angle and stuff like that. And so that's not an accident when he gets up there and the first thing he does is call Udonis Haslem over. I mean, he could have, because Alonzo's sitting right there. He called up Alonzo as well, but the first guy he went to was UD because the crowd really loves him as a hometown guy.
And honestly, in those finals, I understand basketball reasons. Shaq allowed for others to thrive there, but he wasn't kidding when he said, "So you kind of bailed me out there," because Alonzo had a more effective NBA Finals just in terms of dynamic plays. And Udonis, you remember Udonis and his amazing defense on almost peak power superhuman Dirk Nowitzki. Shaq was an afterthought in that series, which is crazy.
Yeah, as time goes by, you guys are diminishing more and more, and I just think that's nuts. But
let me ask you. You guys talk a lot on the show about Pat Riley. Part of his greatness is that he can be completely cold-blooded, and when it's time to make a trade or when it's time to say goodbye to somebody, he doesn't care about cutting ties that were strong. In the case of Shaq, we know things went down not so great. So do you feel like inevitably when people come back for ceremonies like this, if it's in Miami and if Pat Riley's still around and if he was a big part of whatever ended their tenure there, it's always going to be a little awkward and a little frosty? Even someone like LeBron, not from the crowd, but just in general.
Well, like, I don't think Pat Riley is going to be around here, at least in that position, when and if the time comes.
Firing Pat Riley?
No. I mean, he's older. I don't think Pat Riley is going to be making the call to retire like someone like LeBron James's jersey. That's just way, way too frosty at the moment. And, yeah, I think there's something to what you're saying, and even maybe Shaq felt it, even though, like Shaq articulated, saying people think that we have a problem, we don't, and he was praising him while subtly or not so subtly throwing shade at Sam Van Gundy by saying.
Is that your Shaq impression?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't really.
Do you have a?
I was just talking deeper.
Limited Shaq.
I don't. It's not very good. Let's not even go there. But I think Shaq Shaq's super smart, right? And I think he purposely wore that Lakers ring.
Oh, they said
to
it was
the ceremony.
Someone said they did a close up on TV and it was like double-sided. Like one part, like this is a custom ring. It might have been his Hall of Fame ring, actually.
Okay.
Because it was like 34 on one side and 32 on the other. And I said, did he get a ring made just for this? Then it just hit me right now. It's probably his Hall of Fame ring.
He still should have wore 2006 for that ceremony.
Well,
right, that makes sense. Speaking of awkward, George Karl and Carmelo, we'll talk about that coming up after Amin has this for you.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. You could save hundreds on your car, business, or recreational vehicle insurance from a local independent agent. Go to Progressive.com today. Now that's Progressive. And now, your SportsCenter update. The Philadelphia Eagles defeated my New York Football Giants 24-19 in Thursday Night Football. Eli Manning went 38 for 63 for 356 yards and a touchdown, but threw for 3 interceptions, one of which was returned for a touchdown. Last night in the Florida Panthers 3-1 loss to the Boston Bruins, for Jaromir Jagr's assist on the Panthers' long goal gave him his 1,888th career point, surpassing former Edmonton Oiler and New York Ranger Mark Messier for second on the NHL's all-time scorers list. There's no and finally here, guys.
Oh, man. No, we got thrusted into a local hour. No and finally.
Oh,
yeah.
I'll look some up.
We'll find some.
The movie we've been excited for all year is in theaters now. Assassin's Creed. Michael Fassbender, Marion Cotillard, and Jeremy Irons star in this action adventure from 20th Century Fox. So don't miss it. Assassin's Creed in theaters everywhere now. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
Dan Le Batard.
I listened to Dan's show while I was in Florida last week, I listened every day, came in the afternoon. It's got a good show.
Stugotz.
It's got a very good show. Oh, it's impeccably produced. I mean, oh, goodness. That is like a training show for kids on how to produce radio.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
Catch Stugotz and Mike Golick Jr. every Sunday on the show that was promised to me once upon a time. Weekend observations from 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. ESPN Radio has you covered for bowl game action. Tune in tomorrow for the Hawaii Bowl. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN app.
You are listening to the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz with neither Dan nor Stugotz. Amin, when was that show promised you?
This was, all right, so full disclosure, it was actually a different show. Stugotz had a weekend show.
Around.
He had a weekend show, I think, at ESPN New York. And he was like, yo, you should be my co-host and we can like talk more hoops and more sports and all this stuff. And I said, great. And he said, do you want me to negotiate your deal for you? And I was like, I mean, yeah, if you could put in the good word. At this time, like I'm still scrounging on my rookie deal. I wanted a couple extra bucks here and there. And Stugotz said, I got you. And then never heard from it again. And then one day I wake up and weekend observations with Mike Golick Jr. and myself, Stugotz. I'm like, whoa.
Oh, I was just asking because I actually did get the show with Stugotz, and then I bailed on him because of Izzy in Spain. So apparently he just decided that he preferred me over you for that show. I don't know if that's going to be awkward for the rest of this show, but
not just you. I mean, it's several people.
Well, and then after I wasn't available, then Golick Jr. and God knows who else passed up before
somebody else said no.
Jr.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's too bad for you.
I feel
we'll
like
have to live with.
I feel like it's a good kind of. I feel like now I have my Stugotz story. Like Billy's got, he still owes him money from. By the way, I saw Sports Bang, guys.
Oh, the famous local sports talk show that Stugotz had on My 33, was it, Billy? Billy produced that show.
God, I can only imagine how terrible that was.
It was on local CBS here. How did you see it?
Look, this is. I didn't see the whole thing.
YouTube?
I saw a clip. And the clip was him having a live read, and he was awful at it. And then at the end, the lower third bar said, "Coming up, more debate." And I lost it when I said, because that's all it said, and I just started dying laughing.
Wait, I just Googled it on YouTube. That's not a thing that you do. I just searched for it on YouTube, and who pops up but Mike Ryan's face closing arguments.
Yeah. No, you know how he promised you guys shows?
So this is recent. This is as recent as last year that you guys are still doing the show debating things?
Yeah, fairly recent. I was only in there in spot duty. Billy actually produced that thing full time. I did 3 shows. It was Steve Goldstein, the television voice of the Florida Panthers, and Stugotz. Yeah.
Whose idea was this?
Stugotz's.
Oh, okay. No, whose idea was it?
I'm not going to lie. I think I know why Stugotz elected not to offer you a show, at least not one that's produced as such, because you could see a full body shot of Stugotz and his short little legs across the table from Mike, who looks handsome and young and lithe and tall, and then Stugotz on the other side, who's a little bit red, like maybe he was partying the night before, maybe his face is permanently that color.
He was golfing.
Golf potentially, and yeah, it's not. I think Stugotz excels where you can really only see the top of his body and his stubby little sausage fingers, because it really doesn't look like a fair fight based on this particular clip I'm looking at.
Do his feet touch the ground?
His feet are barely touching the ground. As you guys know, he's 5'8" on a good day.
No, he's 5'6".
5'6" when he takes his shoes off.
Is his shirt tucked in? Because that was always a fight we would have
His
every
shirt
morning.
is tucked in. Yeah, his shirt is tucked in. I think he's trying to have good posture, but... Oh, this is much better. Now he's across from someone who's built similarly to him, and he doesn't look like he's going to be quite as overmatched.
Has he scratched himself in any of the videos that you've seen yet? Because that was a running theme.
That's what's troubling to me is I feel like you can see way too much of Stugotz. I prefer when he's mostly blocked, and you can mostly just hear him.
It was a really good show, Sarah.
Really? Is this one
of
of the many things you didn't get paid for?
This was the main thing I didn't get paid for. We used to play games called Panic or Calm. Then we had this deal with Papa John's where we had to create a Papa John's segment. So we came up with something called Slice It Up, which was exactly like Panic or Calm, but it was called Slice It Up. And then we had it was all basically the same game with different imaging and different names, and it was catered mainly around sponsors.
Yeah, we had an Isle Casino. What was it? You had a Hold'em or Fold'em game.
Yeah. We had the All In or Fold, and we had this. It was a local casino, and I made I was the arts and crafts person on the show also, so I made these.
It sounds like you miss it.
I do kind of. I mean, it was very stressful at the time.
Fondly.
Yeah, I do miss it. It was fun. We had this local wing place where we had a game called Wing It, where we just threw questions at them that they weren't prepared for. But eventually we had to prepare them because they had nothing on a lot of the topics.
Yeah, the show existed because of sponsorship. It was it was brokered programming under the guise of, hey, we'll talk sports. But it's
a bunch of terribly named segments.
It's like Stugotz was one of those Hollywood producers of the late 90s where, there's an old Coke commercial or it was a Sprite commercial where it's all right, do we have the merchandising? Yes, we got the units ready to go. And do we have, they talk about all the extraneous things, and then at the end it's beautiful, all we need is a script and we got a movie, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
That was what it was.
I think we had only one segment that wasn't a gimmick segment, and it was just the first segment. Because I'm now remembering the last segment was called Closing Arguments, and they had they were dressed as judges and had a gavel.
Then a law firm sponsored.
Yeah.
Impeccably produced.
Yeah, this sounds like something that actually Stugotz would excel at. This sounds like probably peak Stugotz.
By the way, you had 2 segments. 2 just regular segments. The opening one and then more debate.
Did you watch a full show, Amin?
That was probably in the off time when we couldn't have sponsors, so we didn't have it. But if we had the sponsors, they got a segment.
That sounds absolutely terrible, and I'm sorry I missed it. I really do want to talk about George Karl and Melo. I imagine that you've talked about it at length, a little bit since the news hit, but I want to get into it a little bit and whether we can actually parse what's true out of that and what's sort of the salacious type of stuff you read it in order to sell a book. And we have to talk about Mac Daddy Santa because I'm deeply disturbed by that photo of Tiger Woods. If you did not see it yesterday, go ahead and Google search Mac Daddy Santa. I'm sorry for ruining your day. I want to talk about whether Mike Ryan or Mac Daddy Santa has worse nipples. That's coming up.
Dan Le Batard.
All right, hold on a second. We've got 1 minute left in the segment. Can we have everyone, including Roy? Roy, do you do a fake Stugotz?
Yeah, buddy, I actually do.
All right, let's all of us at the same time. It's going to be being John Malkovich for 1 minute. Go.
Stugotz.
Hey, buddy.
Listen, man. I'd love to join the show tomorrow. You know, I'll do anything for you. I'll do anything for you guys.
I am never playing here.
Make sure
This is all an elaborate ruse. Okay? I am way overpaid.
Opportunity.
Fine, I'll listen.
Get on SportsCenter.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Dan Le Batard Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. Choose Shell V-Power Nitro plus premium gasoline for the best total engine protection you can get. And now, your SportsCenter update. The Philadelphia Eagles defeated the New York Giants 24-19 in Thursday Night Football. Eli Manning went 38 for 63 for 356 yards and a touchdown, but threw for 3 picks, one of which was returned for a touchdown. Last night in the Florida Panthers 3-1 loss to the Boston Bruins. Forward Jaromir Jagr's assist on the Panthers' lone goal gave him his 1,888th career point, surpassing former Edmonton Oiler and New York Ranger Mark Messier for second on NHL's all-time scorers list. And finally, a group of models spent 6 hours doing a fashion shoot after discovering a body when they broke into a derelict warehouse. The group of 8 also went out for pizza before contacting police about the discovery of a 27-year-old man who had hanged himself. More than ever, at Buffalo Wild Wings, they do it for you. That means every down of every game during this can't-miss part of football season. A new limited-release beer and a menu that includes their new handcrafted burgers. Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings. Beer. Sports. Please drink responsibly. For all of the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
It's Sarah Spain and Amin El Hassan. This is the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. I'm sorry, you said those models went out for pizza before calling about a dead hanging body?
Yeah, how about that? Jaromir Jagr.
Jaromir Jagr. Did you see Jagr's quote about his assist?
I did not. What did he say?
So his assist in the lone goal against the Bruins came after the puck bounced off his butt in front of the net. And so the little ceremony that they had on ice afterwards, he took the mic and, as usual in Jagr style, he said, "I thought I was going to score a goal or make beautiful assist, but it hit my ass."
Nice. Eloquent. Succinct.
Eloquent. Beautiful. Listen, I'm not going to begrudge the guy a darn thing when he's as old as he is and he's out there. 44 years old and still actually contributing. And
you know what's funny? Yesterday, somebody brought this up that Manny Ramirez is contemplating a comeback. And I said, I'm surprised that doesn't happen more in baseball. Why aren't there 44-year-old dudes in baseball? Or a lot more of them, I should say.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it isn't as physically demanding in a lot of ways as something else. But I guess you'd think you'd have to be a DH, right?
Right. I mean, that's like a job where literally all you have to do is get up and hit the ball, and then that's it.
I wouldn't begin to know how many DHs have. You look at someone like David Ortiz, though, who's not that old, and even as a DH has said his body's done for, that he would love to keep playing, but it takes a Herculean effort to get his feet ready for every game.
What? To get his feet ready?
Yes.
What, standing is hard for him?
You weren't following along with the story? Because as he continued to play at such a high level this year, people kept saying, there's a chance he's going to come back. We don't believe him. We think after the year that he's had and the way the Red Sox went out earlier than expected that he's going to come back and change his mind. But from the very beginning of this season, he said he's got such terrible pain in his feet. And it hurts so much that it takes an incredible amount of prep to get ready. He could barely run. He's in severe pain all the time. So I mean that's specific to Ortiz. So who knows what other aging DHs might struggle with? But I think as much as we look from afar and say it's not hockey, it's not football, whatever, that's still to say that it's a complex athletic endeavor for someone who's getting up there.
David Ortiz can barely run, but has nothing to do with his feet.
What are you implying?
Hefty guy.
Are you fat shaming him?
A little bit.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics. I don't know if he had some sort of specific injury or if he's got patellar tendonitis or whatever that is. But and maybe that's part of it. But you're right. I mean, if any sport other than golf, baseball I think allows, and then of course Tom Brady's going to play till he's 45.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
As he's told us, or at least intimated. Speaking of football, I didn't realize that the New York Giants were your New York Giants.
Yeah, I'm a Giants fan.
That's a disappointing
That's like
result last evening.
This is my whole thing about the Giants. They are the classic underachieving C student that kills every single finals. Like, that's what they do. So you're not worried after an effort like that, though? Because, of course, you'd like to get into the playoffs with that win. Now you've got to wait on a couple of the teams potentially losing this weekend. But they don't look like they'll do much in the playoffs based on that performance. This is what they do, right? They fail the midterm. They don't turn in their work on time. They've got to furiously turn in a season, a semester-long project that they worked on last night. Like,
it's a volcano that actually spews lava.
And then they go in there and they ace the final. They ace the final, and everyone in class looks at them like, "How do you do it?" And you kind of shrug. You want to play video games now? Those are my New York Giants.
Right. So, I mean, I get that that's the narrative that we've seen. I get that that's what they've shown us many times over, including that Super Bowl season. But at some point it has to end. Both Super Bowl seasons, one more so than the other, was a shock. But you at some point that has to end. And when your team is depending on a quarterback who can be alternately terrific and alternately incredibly mediocre, if not worse, like last night when he's got 3 picks. At some point that magic does end, and you're not concerned at all that this is the iteration that's not going to be able to pull that off? I
like living in the moment, Sarah. I like, they've given me 2 of the happiest moments of my adult life. I'm not going to begrudge them now. I'm not going to turn around and run Eli out of town with a pitchfork. Okay, I just figure if they tell me, look, we're gonna do this, like, you guys have done it enough times for me to believe it.
So New York could still make the playoffs if Detroit, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, or Atlanta loses. But I love the fact that we have a Thursday night game that's meaningful in the way that it affects the Giants, but is not a great matchup, right? It was the Eagles coming off, I think, 5 straight wins before that. But we build it up as this big game because it does have playoff contentions or intentions for the Giants. And then the front page of ESPN.com is the one crazy scenario that could leave the Giants out of the playoffs. And it says there are 8 things that need to happen.
That's a good story.
And I just love that it's like just worst case scenario front page in it, just for you Giants fans, just to throw you for a loop.
Whoever pitched that story, hey, kudos to that editor. That's really good. Like the 8 crazy things that need to happen for the Giants to not make the playoffs? Yeah,
like the front page story, and here's what it's mathematically possible, but improbable, that the Giants failed to make the playoffs for a 5th year after a 24-19 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday. A lot has to happen, though. So would you like to hear the 8 things that need to happen?
Sure.
Okay, so the first thing, the 9th, of course, was when they lost to the Eagles for the second time in 9 games. The other 8 are: the Packers beat the Vikings on Saturday. The Falcons beat the Panthers on Saturday. The Bucks win at the Saints on Saturday. The Lions win at the Cowboys on Monday. And then next week, the Giants would have to lose to the Washington racial slurs. The Packers win at Detroit. The Falcons beat the Saints, and the Bucks beat the Panthers.
That's more than 8 things.
That is 8, exactly 8. And the Giants would finish then in a 3-way tie with the Lions and the Bucks at 10-6 for the 2 wildcard spots in the NFC, and then they would be left out because they're the tiebreakers.
Lovely.
But if just one of those games ends differently, then they clinch a playoff berth. So it's such a weird story because it's like incredible. It's if you went to Vegas with that parlay, I wouldn't give you many odds to win.
I wouldn't either because I'm a Giants fan. So, I would say you're betting against fate. Destiny.
Betting against fate. Destiny.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, we know what Bob Costas says about destiny. I mean, if it's predestined, then you don't have, you can't control your own destiny. It's already going to happen.
Is that how he articulated it?
I mean, I'm sure he articulated it much better. He's Bob Costas. Oh. But he made a good point, which is that every single time we say that a team has its destiny in its own hands, we're essentially misusing the word destiny, because if it was predestined, then they wouldn't have any control over it.
I see.
Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense to me.
I've articulated it poorly enough, but effectively enough for you.
Can we get Bob Costas on the line?
Yeah, we should. We can't get Richard Marks, but let's get Bob Costas.
No, I'm just because I know you guys have like one Costas bullet a year, right?
Yeah.
You already used it
now.
Yeah.
Can we?
We use
Speaking of Richard Marks, Richard Marks' kids went to my private junior high school. I should have, next time you guys want to get in touch with them, I should try to use, the Lake Forest connection.
Yeah, you should have absolutely volunteered that information. It would have been helpful.
It would have been great to have them today when these guys were gone, and then we
it'd be kind of like that day that
so mad.
Yeah, it'd be like that day that Bryan Cranston just randomly showed up in studio when Sedano and Izzy were doing a total surprise.
Yes, I remember that
in person.
Yeah, and Benjamin Bratt too. Yeah. Devilishly handsome Benjamin Bratt.
Oh man, Detective Curtis from Law and Order.
That's right.
One of my favorites.
I promise we're going to talk about George Karl after this. It's Sarah Spain and Amin El Hassan, Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Catch more of the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz, 10 to 1 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPNU.
College football lives here. After winning the Big Ten title, Penn State believe they earned a trip to the playoff.
This is one of the better stories of college football.
Now they take their 9-game winning streak to Pasadena to face USC, winners of 8 straight.
Slash back at the 5, touchdown, Trojans.
The Rose Bowl game presented by Northwestern Mutual. Coverage begins January 2nd at 5 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot even if you have insurance with another company. See how much you can save before you switch. Guests on the Dan Le Batard Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And now, your SportsCenter update. The University of North Carolina is facing an NCAA extra benefits charge for its basketball team, covering a period between 2002 through 2010. If the players involved are deemed ineligible, the Tar Heels championships in 2005 and 2009 could potentially be vacated. The Cleveland Indians have agreed to a 3-year, $60 million deal with designated hitter Edwin Encarnacion. The deal includes a 4th-year club option of $20 million with a $5 million buyout. And finally, the man who flew over Calgary in a lawn chair strapped to 100 helium balloons has been ordered to pay thousands of dollars. That's right, on July 5th, 2015, a man dubbed the Ballinatic tied $13,000 worth of industrial-sized balloons to his lawn chair.
It's a balloonatic.
Well, why didn't you have an extra O in the balloonatic? That's how it was spelled. I'm just reading what Roy hands me.
Stugotz and everyone.
$13,000 worth of industrial-sized balloons to his lawn chair took to the skies in a stunt to promote his cleaning company. Not one, but 2 planes flew beneath him in his journey, in which he only was equipped with an oxygen tank, a radio, and a parachute. This SportsCenter update is brought to you by Barbasol. America, you're looking good. You're shaving with close, comfortable Barbasol shaving cream. Close shave, America. Close shave, Barbasol. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
I had a lot of trouble keeping up with that, but despite your massive failure in pronouncing the name and in explicating that in a way that anyone could understand, it did still remind me of that Balloon Boy hoax. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
That
was Bubble Boy.
It was in Colorado. They had a gas balloon filled with helium, and they let it float away, and then they claimed their 6-year-old falcon was inside it. And so they sent massive amounts of people to try to save him, and all this money was spent. And as it turned out, he was never in there in the first place. He was hiding in the attic.
Nice. Booger McFarland joins us now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Booger, you remember the Balloon Boy?
No, I'm not a member of the Balloon Boy, but I mean, you were so close on that read. I was like, yeah, he's getting it. And then all of a sudden, just kind of went downhill there, buddy.
I'll take a picture of the way it was spelled, and it was spelled Ballinatic. And so I thought maybe it was like a...
Was there a U in there?
It was BallonAtic. Ballinatic.
Well,
not Balloonatic.
Should have been UNATIC, Balloonatic.
Or maybe a hyphen in there, Mike. Maybe throw one of those.
Yeah, man, get your own finalies.
What's up, Booger? So you've been a little bit outspoken about this Grayson Allen stuff on Twitter, and you reminded me of something I'd completely forgotten about, which was Coach K and Dylan Brooks. If you guys don't recall, Dylan Brooks of Oregon got a talking to from Coach K, saying, you're too good of a player to be showing out at the end. And a lot of people really took umbrage with Coach K disciplining another team's player. And I think you found it ironic that he didn't feel the need to do so with his own player until after some public outrage.
Yeah, Sarah, to me, this was the ultimate hypocritical move by Coach K. And here he is. A year or so ago, disciplining or chastising Dylan Brooks about him being a great player and not having to act a certain way. But now he's got a guy who I think was the preseason favorite probably to win the ACC Player of the Year in Grayson Allen. And he has a third kicking incident, a temper tantrum on the sideline. And Coach K basically says, you know what? Hey, I'll deal with my player the way I want to. And then the public outcry comes out, and then he suspends him. I just think it was the ultimate hypocritical move. I think Grayson Allen, yeah, he's got some anger issues and some temperamental problems, but I think he's a guy that's just been enabled. Because I learned a long time ago, if you want to stop something, you have to nip it in the bud. Now, when I was young, we got spankings, and I realized that's something you can't do now. However, with the player, take away his playing time. Sit him on the bench, send him to the locker room. What you don't do is enable him by allowing him to keep playing and still doing the same thing. So I think Coach K failed the kid. After the first or second time he did it, and now the fact that he did it a third time, he's going to sit him down. I do think he failed the kid.
But the thing that confuses me is, can't he just be a dirty player? I mean, we have these guys. They're everywhere. They're in every sport. They're guys that are known to be dirty. And that's how I've taken him so far in his career. I was like, oh, he's a dirty one. And then all of a sudden now, yesterday, it felt like everybody had to be, again, armchair psychologist. Well, he's having a mental breakdown. No, he's not. He's just a kid that trips people. Guess what? Dante Jones did it too, and he went to Duke. And he had a great NBA career in terms of, being around.
Well, you know what? I mean, that very well could be so. Either way, it's up to Coach K to figure out a way to stop it. I mean, once it happens one time, whatever it is, Coach K, his job is to figure out what it is and nip it in the bud. Then it happens again, and we don't do anything about it except a little bit more harsher words. And then it happens a third time, and you're like, okay, why does this keep happening? It keeps happening because you keep allowing him to play, Coach K. It's really simple. So whether he's a dirty player or just a guy that misses home or needs somebody to pin him up against the wall, man, look here. Stop acting like an idiot, man. So whatever it is, he needs to nip it in the bud. And I think since he's away from home, that's Coach K's job.
Right. I think part of it is his reaction, particularly this most recent time, the sort of seeming like he's pulling his hair out on the bench and is incapable of controlling himself and then hanging his head and sort of being unable to really address it. He seems as if he really does regret when he makes these mistakes and when he does these things. And I think that's why people try to play armchair psychiatrist instead of just writing him off as a bad kid. But since Le Batard isn't here today, I'm going to take it upon myself to talk about race. I'm just curious how you think this same exact sort of actions, like 3 times since February, tripping other players, would be reacted to differently if he were a black player.
If he were a black player, I think a lot of people would call him probably some form of the word thug. He doesn't know how to act in public. He's a dirty player. That would have been the front line. No one would be using the psychoanalysis of saying he needs to get counseling or anything like that because, God forbid, a black player gets some counseling. So I think when it's all said and done, I think there is an element of race in it. There's an element of race in every part of life. We just choose to talk about certain parts of it and certain parts we don't. But when it comes to Grayson Allen, you best believe if this had been a black player and he had done this 3 times, better yet, Sarah, I'll take it another level. Let this have been a black coach or a coach that doesn't have the accolades that Coach K has. We wouldn't have given him the benefit of the doubt after the second time he did it. So I think race and accolades or accomplishments by the coach and or player definitely play a role in this.
Booger, you said earlier maybe he just needed someone to pin him against the wall. Do you have any stories from when you played where someone had to get pinned against the wall for stuff that they were doing?
Well, I'll use my own self, guy. You go back to 1996 when I was in college, and my defensive line coach was a guy named Mike Tollison, and just a great guy, and he was responsible for me being where I am today. That was one day my sophomore year, and he told me, he said, listen, he said, you got a chance to be a great player. He said, but you got to grow up. Stop eating honey buns and Twinkies and ding-dongs and gaining weight, and take this craft and hone your craft. And, he didn't literally pin me against the wall, but he cornered me in a room and looked me dead in the eye and put his finger on my nose and said, you know what, you got a choice to make. You can be a great player, or you can be a guy that just comes to LSU and has a decent career, and 5 years later no one knows who in the hell you are. And so that kind of talk to me woke me up. And it's not that I was a bad kid, but I was just kind of lollygagging through college a little bit, and someone was able to tell me, listen here, stop acting ignorant and grow up. And I think Grayson Allen needs to have that. And whether that's Coach K or whether that's his mom or his dad, and somebody needs to put their finger on his nose. Like, listen here, you're a grown man by most standards. Start acting like a grown man. Stop tripping people, okay? Because when you get to the league, if you trip somebody, you're going to mess around and trip the wrong guy, and I promise you won't trip anybody else.
Right, and even if it's something that he can control and what he needs is to be scared straight, then that's one approach. And if that approach doesn't work and he keeps doing it, then there's a root cause that's deeper than that you have to fix. Because, as much as people don't like, this sounds like a really girly thing to say, but you make an agreement when you go out on the court that you're going to play basketball and it's going to end there. And you are respecting each other in a way that means you're not going to get hurt and you're not going to do things that fall outside the game. And if you keep doing it, not only do you lose the respect of everybody, you're going to get suspended, but it's just going to prevent you from being an effective player. And eventually he has to figure that out, whether that's just being scared straight or actually delving deep into his psyche to figure out why he can't control himself. Booger, I wanted to ask you also about the bowl games. I think we've all gotten to the point where unless we're a college coach who's selfish and has no perspective, we all agree that it's up to these players, the McCaffreys and the Fournettes of the world, to make the right decision for their future. That being said, beyond that, accepting as we are of their decision to do that, do we worry at all about this building and getting worse and worse to the point where these bowl games are basically a bunch of backups and scrubs?
No, usually what happens in society, Sarah, is we see one or two people do something and we say, oh, but what if everybody does it? Well, you know what? Guess what? Everybody's not doing it. Right now we're talking about a position-specific detail of running backs. You talk about McCaffrey, Shocklin Wood, and Leonard Fournette. These are running backs. Running backs only. Well, yeah, exactly. You only have so many hits left in you. You only have so many times that a running back can be hit in their shelf life and they'll be gone. And so I think if I'm a running back and I'm not playing for a national championship and I'm suspected to be a very, very high pick, prime example, Leonard Fournette, he's been hurt all year long. He's a generational type running back, and everyone I talk to says he's going to be a top 10 pick. Well, that's $20 million guaranteed. So now, do you want to risk $20 million guaranteed to go play in the Buffalo Wild Wings Citrus Bowl against Louisville? Nothing against Buffalo Wild Wings. I love wings, but they're really not going to do anything for me once the game is over. So I get it. Christian McCaffrey, his dad is Ed McCaffrey, so he's a former NFL player. So I trust the advice he's getting and the expertise. To answer your question directly, I do not think we're going to get to a point where these bowl games are going to become meaningless, because college football is about tradition and about matchups. And when you can get matchups like Florida State and Michigan, Florida and Iowa, you got Western Michigan against Wisconsin, these are non-traditional matchups that each fan base is going to look forward to, and I think the kids will look forward to also.
We thank you for making time for us, Booger. You got big plans this weekend for Christmas?
I'm just going to relax and lay low and then get ready for I'll fly out Monday to get bowl season started and get ready for the Peach Bowl and see if Washington can tame the big bad tiger known as Alabama.
All right, we look forward to that coverage. Thanks so much, Booger.
Always, anytime. But, man, keep reading, brother. You're going to get it.
Thanks,
Keep reading. Sarah Spain and the always reading Amin Al-Hassan. This is the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Dan Le Batard. For me, the eyebrows are probably my best features.
All right. I mean, what is that saying?
Well, they're thick and they're nice, and,
the eyebrows are your best feature, but, I mean...
It's not saying much.
What is leprosy's best feature?
Stugotz. It's the best I've got, Dad.
All right. Your eyebrows are your best feature? Do you really get complimented on that a lot?
I do often, yes. They're nice, right? Look at them. Come on, they're thick.
They look like ferrets.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Dan Le Batard Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. And now, your SportsCenter update. The University of North Carolina is facing an NCAA extra benefits charge for its basketball team, covering a period between 2002 and 2010. If the players involved are deemed ineligible, the Tar Heels' NCAA championships in 2005 and 2009 could potentially be vacated. The Cleveland Indians have agreed to a 3-year, $60 million deal with designated hitter Edwin Encarnacion. The deal includes a 4th-year club option of $20 million with a $5 million buyout. And finally, 70 staff members fell ill after a Department of Health luncheon. This SportsCenter is brought to you by JCPenney. Save an extra 20% off with your JCPenney credit card and coupon on select items across the store and at jcp.com. Plus, earn $15 in JCPenney cash for every $50 you spend in store, up to $75. That's getting your pennies worth, JCPenney. For all of the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
Am I remembering correctly, speaking of your story just there about the health department luncheon gone wrong, there was a story where there were some lawmakers and they were trying to pass a bill that would allow raw milk instead of unpasteurized or whatever, and they all drank the milk to celebrate and then got sick.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I guess the FDA says that if you drink unpasteurized milk, it's unnecessarily dangerous, and so you should ban it and only allow pasteurized milk. But this I can't remember. I want to say it was like West Virginia, maybe. They signed a law.
They got sick
right. You remember this, right?
No, I'm looking it up right now. They got sick immediately. There's a great, there's a guy on a couch with his head on a pillow with his hands on his forehead, like it's a lawmaker, and he's just sprawled out. He immediately got sick.
I feel like there's so many jokes you could make about people getting what they asked for.
Right.
But I don't.
Well, there was a terrible story about there was a motorcycle ride, and the ride was to protest a helmet law.
No.
Yeah. And the guy died. There was a minor crash and one of the guys died.
He was a proponent.
Ride.
He was a proponent of a law.
He was saying not to have helmets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So somebody has suggested that an opponent to the Stugotz Army would be the Spanish Armada. So I feel good that I'm creating my own opposing force. I hope that I won't be as weak and unfit for battle as Pablo's army. I'm hoping the Spanish Armada has a bit more strength to it than the other factions who've gone up against Stugotz's army.
I feel like he's not even Pablo's army, it's Pablo's United Nations, right? Like Pablo.
Firm believers in diplomacy. And it's just basically, we're going to send out a bunch of ambassadors and let's talk this out.
I think Pablo wants to negotiate.
Let's have coffee.
I'm always picked on for being so mean, but I usually stick to my principles. So I think even as mean and ruthless as I am, I would still probably be foiled by Stugotz using dirty tricks and not playing by the rules of war.
Oh, yeah. No, Stugotz's army, they don't follow the Geneva Convention or any of that.
Yeah. I think the Spanish Armada, though powerful and evil, would likely not be in power for long because they would fall for one of Stugotz's tricks.
I feel kind of left out that I don't have an armed force.
What would yours be?
I don't know.
Well, yours would be made up mostly of
SEAL Team 6 or something like that.
Of illegals, though, right? Because you're technically you're not an American citizen.
Ouch.
You would be an infiltrating force.
Well, I got to be illegal, though.
I don't know.
There is an in between, Sarah.
Oh, all right. What would your army be made up of?
Covert operations. I'm like a sleeper cell. Yeah. Getting uncomfortable
right, exactly. I'm gonna be made to feel bad for making the brown guy, as Dan says, the sleeper cell.
I got to get on a flight later today, so this will be fun.
By the way, did anyone find out what ended up happening with the guy who claimed to have been kicked off the Delta flight, but he was a YouTube star, so no one really knows whether that was staged or not?
No, it's not. He's not a YouTube. It's not because he's a YouTube star. It's not like he has like a makeup channel on YouTube. This is a dude.
A makeup channel?
There are many types of YouTube stars,
There are other YouTube stars that
I'm just saying,
show you how to do makeup tricks.
The makeup ones seem to do very well for themselves. That's all I'm saying. But this guy is part of the larger movement on YouTube of people who are prank, but there's no prank. Like a prank would involve like some sort of clever kind of thing to it. It's like, no, I'm just gonna do something obnoxious and then get knocked out. And they're like, dude, bro, it's just a prank. It's just a prank. Like, it's not funny. It's not creative.
So it's
not
punked,
original.
Gone wrong.
Yeah, but it's not even punked because at least there was like some sort of premise and a setup as opposed to I'm just going to do something really obnoxious as someone that nobody knows, right? So I don't know. This is the problem of the day and age that we live in, right? What's real and what's fake?
Right.
But apparently there was someone who was on the flight who said, now if you don't know the story is these guys who are of I guess Middle Eastern descent were on a flight. One guy called his mom, allegedly, and was speaking to her in Arabic, and one of the passengers complained, and the flight attendant kicked them off the flight. And as they're getting kicked off the flight, that's where the video starts, and they're saying, really, you're going to kick me off the flight for speaking in Arabic, for speaking another language, And it's very, it's a scary time where we're living in where that's the kind of xenophobia that's running around, right? Apparently, that's not exactly how it went down. Right. First of all, it turns out, again, allegedly, neither of those guys made a phone call. And it was one guy was sitting on one side of the plane, the other one was sitting at the other. And then the guy was yelling at him to say something in Arabic and kind of balling up his fists. And so again, just being a feminine hygiene product for no good reason, right? And apparently they've had this before where they were on a plane and they were counting down in Arabic, and I've watched that video.
Right, and it not that long ago, just last week, in fact, he posted a video saying that he smuggled himself on a plane to another city, and it worked. But Tiger Air Australia responded to and wrote, "Nice try, Adam, but definitely a few inconsistencies with this video, namely the fact that we have footage of you boarding the plane."
It's just like
so. And then he has another video that he made where he claimed to be showing anti-Muslim bias from the NYPD. And then somebody pointed out that video that he made where he allegedly snuck onto the plane in a suitcase, the gentleman on this current Delta video who seems to be really emotional and seems to be a stranger, but is saying that guy was in the same video.
Yeah, no, it's his partner.
Right.
And I don't think they try to hide that in this latest thing. But my whole thing is this, right? We got enough problems, bro.
Right.
And there are enough real examples of people getting discriminated against and being treated unfairly because of a funny last name, quote unquote, or because of speaking a different, remember there was a story.
The most notable one was the Ivy League professor.
Yeah, the guy was doing
math.
He was doing math on a plane.
And America is full of idiots. So she saw his calculations and didn't recognize what they were.
The jackhole thought it was a different language.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've got enough real stuff. We don't need you to... And one of my most hated things that people do on Twitter is whenever they say, "Oh, you're just doing it for clicks." Like, bro, I haven't written an article in like months. I don't know how many views or listens my podcast get. Like, none of that stuff. So it's corny, but these dudes are literally doing it for clicks.
Yeah, and it's really, and like you said, it's really damaging and it's frustrating if there are actual incidents of this going on. And because I just wouldn't feel safe in today's environment. I mean, we saw what happened with Richard Marx and that rope. You don't want to act up on a plane because Richard Marx might be there ready to
with a rope.
Restrain you. Yeah. But for real, though, I wouldn't feel comfortable staging anything like that for fear that there might be someone on the plane who decides to take matters into their own hands, particularly because it's coming out more with this story that it wasn't just a matter of, a phone call. They were intentionally trying to rile up passengers, intentionally trying to create an atmosphere in which when they started the video, it would look like people were, hoping that they would get kicked off.
Right.
And
there are people in the back like waving goodbye to them. Bye.
Yeah, which initially when I saw that I was like, oh my God, I'm repulsed by those people. Like how disgusting are those people? And then as it turns out, there's all sorts of shouting and disruption that they caused before that to make it, to make those people who are not aware that it's a prank, genuinely probably worried for their safety.
Yeah, the worst part, in summation, the worst part is when things like this happen, now all you're doing is giving fire to the other side. Say, see, I told you it's not real. It's just people being sensitive.
Absolutely. We have Stugotz's grievance about me. That's coming up. It's Sarah Spain and Amin El Hassan. This is the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Dan Le Batard. The guys in the other room have been spending on things for the show, and they don't tell me that I owe them money.
Stugotz.
And while we're talking to them, we're saying, yeah, you guys need to tell us when we owe you money, because I hate owing people money.
I don't.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
Time to find out what's on the menu at Buffalo Wild Wings. Here's what's happening on Christmas. In the NFL, Ravens at Steelers at 4:30 Eastern. Broncos at Chiefs at 8:30 Eastern. And in the NBA, Celtics at Knicks at noon Eastern. Warriors at Cavs at 2:30 Eastern. Bulls at Spurs at 5 Eastern. Timberwolves at Thunder at 8 Eastern. Clippers at Lakers at 10:30 Eastern. That's what's on the menu. Brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports.
Were you just like slow jamming the news because of Richard Marx?
But then I started building. Then
you build to a crescendo?
Yeah. By the way, every time I hear Richard Marx, I always think of, I don't know if any of you guys remember this. There's that VH1 show, I Love the 80s. And someone said that Richard Marx's hair in this video was perfectly coiffed to fit the headphones over. It was just like a perfect mullet, but with like two indentations where the headphones would fit.
I don't remember ever seeing that video, but now I need to.
He was in the studio. Mike, you remember this, right? He was like in the studio.
I actually just saw this video. I really binged. I binged hard on some AC bangers this week. Yeah, like I got lost in Richard Marx. Next thing you know, you're like, oh, Corey Hart, and then next thing you know, like Rick Astley.
Yeah.
But it's over now.
Sarah Spain used to sing, apparently.
Roxette, man. Remember that song?
Yeah, I do remember that song. But you had a past as a vocalist, right?
Yes, but then I got nodes in my vocal cords. I had to get surgery.
That's what they're calling them?
That's what they're calling them. That is why my voice sounds like this. I actually have never smoked a single cigarette in my life, but every time I go on the radio, somebody new pops in to be like, oh, you must smoke a pack a day.
Menthols.
Yeah, menthols.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking cigarettes. Your voice sounds like gin.
Yeah, just like Kesha style, just like mouthwash with a bottle of Jack. Yeah, I mean, occasionally I do sound like this because I have imbibed the night before and I have really sensitive vocal cords because of my issues. So if I do like drink or if I go like to a concert or a wedding or something, I'm like talking or yelling or something, my voice is super reactive to that. But the main issue is that I had this vocal cord problem, and I went to Northwestern and I tried to do all this vocal therapy, but part of the issue is like the way I talk too. So if I was going to try to actually pursue a career in singing and protect my voice, I'd have to avoid all these different vocal things. Like they call it glottal fry, which is when you end a sentence with not enough breath and it starts to sound like this at the end. So I would have to speak like this, where all of my words are flowing into each other, and I take constant breaths to ensure that I'm never getting gravelly at the end of sentences, which is so annoying, right? I mean, I'm not going to spend my whole life talking like that. So
I disagree.
You like that?
I like it. It sounds like you're explaining something to me very, very carefully.
Well, I have
a lot of you know, like when you were telling me about the Bob Costas quote about Destiny, like you should have done it in that. Do it again. Now do it in that voice.
Okay, so the thing is, if it's destiny, then it's predestined. So you can't actually control your own fate because it's destined to happen regardless of what you do. So you can't control your fate or control your destiny.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, right?
It's actually funny because I've done a couple pieces for NPR, like essays that I've recorded, and my sister will be like, why do you change your voice for NPR?
Oh, you got to have an NPR voice.
I'm like, you can't help it. I end up doing the sweaty balls bit where I'm like, those are delicious. Yeah. Merry Christmas. Because I just feel weird doing a piece for NPR and being like, yeah, guys, Cubs had a great run. It just sounds so unprofessional when I talk like my normal self.
I think the key to doing NPR voice is you have to really have that
hushed tones.
And also a cup of coffee, maybe a mug on your desk. And then at some point, the consonants have to sound really juicy. So your tongue touching the top of your mouth, the roof of your mouth.
Consonants.
You have to hear that click, clack, you know. Mm-hmm. That's the. I don't know. Is this NPR? Are we still talking about NPR? Or what
well, see, here's the thing. I also have a problem of if I try to sound less like myself, less harsh, I do sound a bit like a phone sex operator.
That's what's going on. That's what was going on.
When I try to smooth out the way I talk, it sort of just sounds a little bit sensual, which is weird to talk about sports like that.
This is like the Seinfeld episode where Elaine left a voicemail for Jerry, and they would just listen to it over and over again. Who's this mystery woman?
Right,
and then George develops a crush as a result on Elaine once he figures out the truth.
Once he realizes it. Yeah, well, it's weird because so I got surgery on my vocal cords my junior year of college, and then that was right before I moved out to L.A. for the summer. I did an internship at Jim Henson Company, and I was living in a frat house. Like, it was just cheap rent.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was the only girl. I had my own room, thankfully, and a lock on it, and a bunch of the dudes were all just crashing in different rooms. It was like $300 a month, which is about as cheap as you're going to get in LA.
No, I want to hear about the Muppets.
Yeah, like, did you, like, yeah.
Oh, working for Jim Henson Company?
Yes,
yeah, it was actually really cool. So it was Charlie Chaplin's old house and all of the neighboring
That's where Rappaport records his podcast now, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I have some cool stories from there. Paul McCartney was recording his album there, so he would walk around and just, say, hello, love, every time he'd pass me. And Chris Isaak was recording there, so he'd sit outside with his guitar and
so sexy, Chris Isaak.
Oh, super sexy.
Tell us more.
Let's talk about Chris Isaak and how sexy he is after this. It's Le Batard Show with Stugotz.
You want more of the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz? Tune in, starting at 10 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPNU.
The College Football Playoff. First in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, undefeated and number 1 ranked Alabama faces Washington, the 4th ranked team in the nation and Pac-12 champion. Then in the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, ACC champion and 2nd ranked Clemson faces number 3 Ohio State. The College Football Playoff. Coverage begins New Year's Eve at 2 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Dan Le Batard Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. And now, your SportsCenter update. Despite George Karl in his new book calling him a conundrum and a user of people, Carmelo Anthony, in regards to Karl's book, says that he hopes his former coach, quote, finds happiness in what he's doing. However, when Karl said that both Anthony and Kenyon Martin were both negatively affected by not having fathers in their lives, and compared both Martin and J.R. Smith to, quote, the spoiled brats you see in junior golf and junior tennis, Martin went to Twitter and called Karl, quote, a terrible person, while Smith responded that Karl is, quote, still trying to be relevant. Sad, just sad, end quote. And finally, a man named Noah Foreman hit 240 green lights in a row with only one yellow while smoothly driving across New York City. To accomplish this feat, Noah had to attempt this at 3 a.m. Assassin's Creed starring Michael Fassbender is in theaters everywhere now. Inspired by the video game that's become a worldwide phenomenon, Assassin's Creed leaps onto the big screen in a story packed with action, adventure, and attitude. Ooh. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day. How about that?
Listener tweeted in, horrible, filling in for Dan and Stu. What about sports, not Bachelorette or your voice?
That's got to be a you don't get the show, right?
That's what I was thinking. Right.
You don't get the show.
That's the amazing part, that someone could listen to this show as we fill in and say, you're doing an awful job filling in.
Where's the
Talk
sports?
more sports. We've probably done way more sports today than we did yesterday.
Right. And not to mention, the fact that we're even on the air and talking is good. I mean, you barely made it to the studio. You showed up yesterday from a red eye. Last night you were out partying. I set my alarm wrong and woke up like 15 minutes before the show was set to start. Someone actually, a tweeter, helped me out earlier by letting me know that it's plantar fasciitis, not plantar tendinitis, which I think everyone knew was what I was looking for, but my brain is not functioning.
When did we talk about plantar fasciitis?
David Ortiz. I said maybe it was plantar tendinitis, which I could not find the word fasciitis at the time, but that's what I meant.
I wasn't listening.
Apparently I said the Eagles had won 5 straight when I meant to say they'd lost 5 straight. Either that or this guy misheard me. Also, I could not find the word playoff implications. So the start of the show was rough for me. Let's just be honest. I had just woken up. I could not remember what state I was in or time zone, just that I needed to host the show. I had planned to wake up much earlier. I heard you had just strolled in, didn't realize that you guys had to do the local hour in Miami.
Yeah, that wasn't our fault. Yeah, that wasn't our
That's
fault.
not miscommunication.
Yeah.
We weren't supposed to do a local hour.
We weren't supposed to do one.
Well, there was a miscommunication in that you ended up having to do it, so something got miscommunicated.
Miscommunication is like the polite way of saying.
A miscommunication, like when you send an email saying, like, hey, there's not going to be a local hour on Friday, and you get a reply saying, all right, all set, no worries, all good. And then you are. I'm not sure that's a miscommunication because it seemed as though the communication was all good. I don't think the error was in the communication.
Right. It wasn't the communication. It was someone just not doing their job.
We had this topic yesterday. Just do your job. Do your job. I'm not gonna. You know what? I've come down from the anger of yesterday. Yesterday was an I would like to say uncommonly bad show for me because I was walking in irritated.
Yeah.
And I took it out on the show.
And you were a bit of a zombie. You'd been traveling. And...
It wasn't a zombie. No, if I was a zombie, then I could have just melted into the background. No, I was actively destructive to the show.
You were a show killer.
Yeah, I was a show killer, but like in a much more nefarious way than Cody. Cody's a show killer, kind of bumbling old man. Mr. Magoo. No, not Cody's not a cornball. What are you talking about?
No,
I mean the jokes.
A little bit. A little bit.
Okay.
Come on.
It's an accurate description, but yeah, he's more of a Mr. Magoo.
Mr. Magoo is what I think about when I think of Cody. I was in there sabotage, right? I was setting timers underneath the desk. I was setting up the can of paint to fall over the door when you open the door.
It was the sleeper cell.
It was the sleeper cell. The sleeper cell was definitely in effect yesterday.
Speaking of, there's already dissension among my ranks because apparently it was the Spanish Armada and not the Spanish Armada that had been suggested as my crew. I thought it was a typo. I was trying to help the guy out, but he has since let me know that no, he's not in fact the founding member of the Spanish Armada, but rather the Spanish Armada. So since we can't even come up with our own name, I'm a bit concerned about how we'll fare against Stugotz Army.
That's not, well, I mean, the Stugotz Army can't read, right? That's
true.
They would have noticed anyway.
Sarah, tell me about the Jim Henson Company and how that was injured and what you were doing there, and did you get to play with Gonzo?
God, I wish I could tell you why that's so funny, but it's very personal. So, I can't. God, that.
I just figured it out.
I can't explain it, but it involves.
I was going to say Beaker, but no.
No, it's Gonzo is the right word. I can't. Moving on.
Don't Google that, kids.
That's a thing. That's a thing with someone that I. Right. Moving on. So I worked in the PR department of Jim Henson Company. And as I said, it's this awesome lot right on, I think it's on La Brea in Hollywood, West Hollywood. And it's Charlie Chaplin's old house and surrounding cottages. And so it's a really cool lot. It used to be Chaplin's like studios where he did all of his stuff. And Paul McCartney, there's a great recording studio there, which I didn't know is where. Who did you say records his podcast there?
Michael Rappaport.
Yeah, Rappaport. So I didn't know that they did podcasts there now, but there's big recording studios. So like I said, Paul McCartney recorded an album there, and so he'd be wandering around the studio and saying hello. And He ended up having a big birthday party while he was. Don't hate on McCartney.
No,
I've heard
he's
your
a fraud.
takes. Nah.
Like, this is the one that I want. As soon as I did that take, by the way, I got back home. I look on Twitter, and look who's doing the mannequin challenge. Paul McCartney. I really like this Black Beatles song.
Fan, so.
As soon as he saw them, he's like, yes, another generation.
He was such a nice guy, though. Listen,
another generation to glom onto.
He could be a total jerk because of his fame and whatever, and he was such a nice guy. He was super down to earth. He had a birthday at the time that he was recording, invited everybody from the recording studio side of the company over to his house, had a big pool party, was throwing people in, was just apparently a totally normal, chill dude. And then Chris Isaak was recording an album there, and I would sit out in the beautiful California sunshine eating my lunch, and Isaac would be sitting on the steps outside the recording studio, like going over some songs and stuff. I'm obsessed with that song, Wicked Game.
Wicked Game
should be on every single person's like boning playlist.
Who can hit that high note? I can't.
In Wicked Game?
Yeah. No.
That's not even that high.
Well, I can't do it. That's me.
Yeah, see, Mike Ryan just nailed it.
No. That's a super sexy video.
Yeah.
Super sexy song.
Video?
Definitely a sexy song. Definitely a sexy video.
Do you guys have like set boning playlists, or do you have like a channel that you know like this is the go-to, or are you just complete silence?
A lot of people. No. I'm willing to help you out here. It's not a go-to every time. I'd be lying if I said I didn't do it. James Blake. James Blake.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
What does he sing?
Look, Roy's with me.
James Blake, the tennis player?
No. That's James Blunt. That's James Blunt.
No, James Blake.
No, James Blake is the tennis player, and James Blunt is the musician.
James Blunt has beautiful. Yeah, James Blake is a tennis player. Yeah. James Blake is also a musician, a super producer. Yeah. He did a song.
Oh, I thought you were talking about James Blunt, and I was like, that's not someone I would want to bone to.
No, because James Blake, remember, he had the police brutality thing, and so I thought
I wouldn't be listening to the tennis
I was like,
player.
yo, that's a weird fetish, man. Like, hold on, baby, let me cue it back up where he's like talking about police brutality. He's like, yes.
Wait, what's a song we would know by James Blake?
Hang on, I'll play it. Like, it was used heavily to promote that show, The Leftovers. I don't know if anybody saw it
on HBO.
Yeah. It's one of those songs that you.
Is it "Limit to Your Love"? I feel like I know that song.
He does have a song. There's a limit to your love. Yeah. Hang on. Like you'll know like the first chord. Like, oh yeah, I've heard that song plenty of times. You just didn't know it's James Blake. Let me find it.
I hear you guys humming in the background, and it sounds like "Take My Breath Away." That's what.
No, but I'd be lying if I.
Boom, boom.
A good one is 07. Do you know 07?
Nope.
If you want a good, like, just you could put on a whole album instead of having to have like a playlist.
Is that the name of the song or the group?
It's the group. Mike will find some 07 for you too. Like, do you ever see Blue Crush?
My mother-in-law loves Blue Crush.
It's a great movie.
Like the first couple months I was dating my now wife, like I would always like walk in and say hello to my mother-in-law, and Blue Crush was always on the TV.
Is that the surfing
one?
Well,
07, I'm pretty sure 07, the song Destiny, is when she has sex with the quarterback guy for the first time in that movie. And all their albums, like all their songs, are perfect for that.
I got a James Blake here song. Like you'll know like right off the bat whether or not you've heard the song or not.
Yeah, Leftovers. You're right.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to add this to the playlist. This seems solid.
By the way, all I know is that opening. Like now, this part here, I would have never recognized it.
That whole album, bangers for.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little literal.
You should work in radio.
Right. You should come back at the next one with 07 Destiny, because you guys will recognize that too. And that group, and Portishead, do you know Portishead?
No.
Love Portishead.
Portishead is another one that always goes on that playlist.
Yo, you know what's funny? Like you said, Blue Crush, and Blue Crush is the type of movie that, like, when you're at a theater and the trailers are coming on and the trailer for Blue Crush comes on, you just know, like, someone like me knows, I mean, this movie ain't for you. Like, just don't even think. It's like when
titles.
Did you see Blue Crush though?
No, because
it was actually a good movie. It was not like it was a good movie. It had cool surfing scenes. It didn't take the relationship like it wasn't super PG about how they interacted, and
Like it's like why I don't watch golf. Like if anytime I'm like, oh, let me give it a try. The commercials are always like Viagra and like investing your financial planning for your retirement.
You don't have to be the target market to enjoy something.
I'm just looking at them like, yeah, they're telling you.
You could be an outlier.
Go ahead and switch the channel. Go ahead. You know, it's like that Family Guy episode where like it's a mega episode. Go ahead. There's a remote. Check what's happening on ABC.
I promise I'm going to play that Stugotz airing of grievance, but quickly to wrap up my Jim Henson tale, they had this big party at the end of the summer, and like I said, I was still in college, so I didn't really know how the real world worked, and they had a giant ice luge that the CEO was drinking out of, which I thought was incredibly unprofessional at the time because I didn't realize that adults like to rage just as much as college kids do, but they also had this booth that you walked into that had these black curtains, and then when you went in, you put on headphones, and you listened to the people who do the voices for Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog did like a fake phone sex conversation between the two of the characters. And so you walked in the booth and put the headphones on. So this party was like really, like everyone got completely destroyed. And actually my boss at the time was the head of PR there. And she, without anybody else in the company knowing it at the time, had been having an affair. Neither of them were married, but it was like undercover with the guy who was running all the janitorial services for the studio and the lot. And they both got so drunk that they passed out in their car because they didn't want to drive home yet, but locked themselves out of the office so they couldn't go in there. So when everybody showed up to work the next morning, they were still asleep, mostly naked in the car in the parking lot.
Shout out to Disney Family. The Muppets and the Jim Henson Company. They are part of the Disney family, by the way. I
feel like George Carl. I'm not going to work there anymore.
You kind of
totally
still
cool.
Work with them. They're just not in the same department as you are. But
they were consenting adults. They're allowed to, get into some extracurriculars. They probably just would have preferred not to have passed out and not woken up until people were arriving at work, wondering why they were in the car.
You guys had a holiday party like on a weekday? On a school night?
I guess it was. Yeah, I think it was because it was probably like whatever night. Holiday parties usually aren't going to be on the weekends. People want their lives then. Yeah. All right, we got some updates. J.R. Smith has had surgeries out 3 to 4 months. Coming up, Stugotz grievances. It's Spain and El Hassan. Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Dan Le Batard.
Stu's been like a pressure cleaner of takes today, right?
Yes, he's come in. What happens
like
is
a sprinkler.
No, but you will notice it.
It's a pressure cleaner, man.
Yes,
there is some force behind this.
It is absolutely not a sprinkler, Stugotz.
Stugotz.
I feel like Stugotz has gone up from the pressure cleaner, and now he is on a knee, and he's got the sleeve of bullets on his right arm as he takes the machine gun Rambo style, just waving it from nipple to nipple.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
If you missed any of the show, you can listen to all 3 hours of the Dan Le Batard Show on demand in the ESPN app, plus our Miami-only hour that airs before the show. And now you can subscribe to our Best Of podcast. It's all available in the Listen tab of the ESPN app. The NBA is on ESPN Radio. Tune in Christmas Day as the Warriors take on the Cavs, followed by Bulls Spurs. Presented by Tissot. Coverage begins Sunday at 1:30 p.m. on most ESPN radio stations. Sarah, my wife has chimed in with a text message, and she says, not only have you watched Blue Crush, but you watched it at the theater with me. Like, okay.
You must have really enjoyed it.
This happened.
You recognize that song, though? That was 07.
Nope.
Huh. It's good stuff. I recommend it. A lot of people chiming in that Portishead is a good call. We're also getting some other suggestions from people. So by the end of the show, we should have a complete playlist that we can have Mike Ryan upload to Twitter for anybody who...
so he doesn't have to listen to James Blake talk about police brutality.
Yeah, exactly. Because I got to tell you, I'm sure his wife is just sick and tired of it always being James Blake talking about police brutality every night.
It's fun. It's fun to switch things around.
Yeah. I'm Sarah Spain. He's Amin El Hassan. This is the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz. Of course, no Dan Le Batard or Stugotz. But I asked Stugotz and a couple other colleagues to chime in on a podcast that I did for Festivus, airing their sports grievances. And Stugotz and I have actually a good relationship. We like to mess with each other, but we get along just fine. And this is what Stugotz submitted as his number one sports grievance for this year.
Hey, it's Stugotz from the Le Batard Show. I've been asked to give Sarah Spain my biggest sports grievance from the past sports year, and the biggest grievance I have is with the person who's asking me to do this, and that's Sarah Spain. That's my grievance. It's Sarah Spain. She should be ashamed of herself. She really should. You know, it's interesting because she came down here. She used my neck as a stepping stone. She used this show as a stepping stone to get herself to SportsCenter and Around the Horn, and I think she did PTI, and I think she hosted Mike and Mike. She did host Mike and Mike because she called me and bothered me to be a guest on that show while I was on vacation. She was hosting Mike and Mike. She was doing it with Greedy. And, you know, it's just interesting because she doesn't come down here anymore. She doesn't do the show with us anymore because she used our show, used Dan, used me, used Mike, used the shipping container to get the things that she wanted out of ESPN. Clearly what she didn't want was coming down here and doing the show because she hasn't come down here in 6 months to do the show with us. And I'm just bothered by this. I'm bothered by Sarah Spain using this and the Chicago Cubs to really enhance her profile. I mean, I would say it's Stugotz 1, Cubs 2, Le Batard 3. And so I'm hurt. And I wasn't invited to the wedding, and I'm never invited to be a guest on Izzy in Spain, or is that the name of the show? I'm never invited on Around the Horn. I'm never invited to do anything that Sarah Spain is doing, yet we welcomed her down here with open arms. She comes down here. She guest co-hosts the show. I take a step back so she can speak more. She does some diss rap and just absolutely annihilates both me and Dan. We don't care. We wear it with a smile. We're cool with it. And Sarah Spain has gone on to much greener pastures while I'm still sitting here doing the show. She's on Around the Horn. She's got her own radio show. She's doing PTI. She's doing Mike and Mike. She is running ESPN. In fact, so much so that there was a time there where she had prevented me from going on SportsCenter, and I have come to learn since then, because I thought it was a joke, that she actually has that power. She has the authority to keep me off of SportsCenter. So, Sarah Spain, you are my 2016 sports grievance.
Nice.
This reminds me of when he was going off on Theo and Joe Madden. And the root cause of his anger, which Dan immediately uncovered, was that they were living the life he wanted. Hanging out with Eddie Vedder and, you know, helping a victorious team win a World Series. And I feel like Stu's just dogging on me for using his exact tactics, but to better success.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, you did kind of do the Stugotz. you absolutely did that. You executed it. It's except yours actually worked. That's the difference. And I think
we've seen Stugotz's star rise in unfathomable ways. I mean, he makes hot takes that actually get stories written about them and require coaches and athletes to chime in on whether or not, you know, they really think that this coach is going here or this player should do X or Y. I mean, that's mind-blowing.
The J.J. Watt thing was the best. That's still like a high water mark for Stugotz. That he actually had people debating whether J.J. Watt is indeed a fraud.
Hey, quick question. So Dwayne Wade missed shoot-around today with the migraine. He's questionable for tonight. Is that an issue ever had in Miami, or is this a one-off?
Yeah, he's had that
common?
plenty. Yeah, he's had that plenty. Not so much in recent years.
Yeah.
But it was a thing like around 2009. Like it pops up on him.
And as I mentioned before, we're still just getting more details on this, but it's come across the wires that J.R. Smith has had surgery and will miss 3 to 4 months.
3 to 4 months?
3 to 4 months. 3 to 4 months.
For a thumb?
We'll talk to Jesse Palmer next about The Bachelor and maybe sports. Sarah Spain, Amin Elhassan, Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Dan Le Batard.
I can't believe Mike Ryan fell asleep during. That is an affront to art. It's just blasphemy.
Who goes to Vegas for shows, honestly?
Really?
Stugotz.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas for shows?
Yes, you go to Vegas for shows.
No, I go to Vegas to gamble to get away from my wife.
Okay, that too.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
Sarah Spain and Amin Elhassan. This is the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Mentioned it earlier, J.R. Smith has had surgery. He's out 3 to 4 months. Vikings running back Adrian Peterson now ruled out versus the Packers. And of note, Joe Mixon is set to meet the media this afternoon. That should be interesting. Amin, yesterday, Twitter went crazy after Tiger Woods posted a photo of himself shirtless with large hairy nipples, flexing his, crossing his arms over his chest, sunglasses, a white goatee, a Santa hat, no beard because he had some sort of painted-on beard of his own, and a hat, and wrote, "Christmas tradition that my kids love, Mac Daddy Santa is back." First of all, it's a deeply troubling photo that burned my retinas. But also, is there any chance whatsoever that the character of Mac Daddy Santa actually originated during some sort of fun playtime with his children?
Oh, I thought you meant in the bedroom. That's what I thought.
That's what I said. Is there any chance it's actually a character he invented to play with his kids? Because I would surmise that Mac Daddy Santa came about in some other way, and he brought it home to his children in a disgusting crossover of two worlds.
So, like, he had so much fun with the waitress from Shoney's the night before.
Yes.
That he said, you know what, guys? Let's run this bit again. But let's repurpose it
yes.
for the kids. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to wear a hat in addition to the wig and the sunglasses and the shirt.
I heard people say that it was a great sign that Tiger Woods is back to his old self again, that as soon as he starts doing pervy sex-related things, that means his golf game's probably back on top.
Yeah. On top.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Phrasing. Yeah.
No, I don't know what to make of Tiger Woods anymore. I think he's like Tara Reid, right? Just spiraling out of control.
Please explain.
Just like at one point.
I'm ready to follow along, but you need to take me there.
What was Tara Reid and what's the other one? The Amanda Bynes, another one, right?
Oh yeah.
Like the really hot momentum at one point, and then the incredible amount of fame and success destroys and rots their innards, and then they just become these kind of almost caricatures.
Really? You're drawing that from the Mac Daddy Santa? Because we're like a few years removed from his big controversy, and now he's like sort of like wading back into both golf and the public eye, and this is like not something ever within his character. Like we've never seen goofy Tiger Woods this way.
But it's not goofy though. It's like it's not like when Shaq puts on a wig and starts singing, like lip syncing to Aretha Franklin.
I think it's meant to be goofy, but he's so creepy that it just comes across as really creepy.
Yes.
It shows you how insulated he is, probably.
Yes.
Where he's like, oh, my kids love it. This would be funny. Like no one's gonna like think any like they'll laugh because it's funny. It's something that I do with my kids, and like he has friends around him. Like yeah, you should post that.
Forgetting that we're all like, no, we read your text messages, dude.
Worse than that. It's like I feel like he's got like a publicist who's saying, now Tiger, you got to be more on social media. You have to have a social media presence. Something. Wait, what is my PR?
Somebody did point out that you can see in the reflection. Yeah, why? You're like listen here, see? Yeah.
It sounds like Mike Greenberg.
Yeah,
I don't have this on any authority. Now, this is just my opinion.
That's a terrible
But Tiger's publicist is giving him bad ideas.
That's a terrible impression. But someone did point out you can see in the reflection of his sunglasses a woman taking the photo, and they're wondering who she is and why she didn't say, this is a terrible idea. Do not post this.
Can we talk about the real awful part about this whole story is Tiger Woods took that picture and he learned through social media reaction that he had large nipples.
Yeah, I guess he didn't know. Well, also, it's got like a weird hair pattern on them.
Yeah, like you got to
like it's very centralized to just. There's a lot of hair, and it's all just right on top of his giant nipple.
It's almost like those monks, the friars, right? Like where it's the hairs around there. And
the one angle does look. The one on the right, just because of the angle, does look a bit like a moob. And for a guy who's like an athlete and in shape, it looks a little mooby.
No,
I'm guessing it's the angle.
That's how it happens, man. You think you're all good. You have no idea. Yeah, I'm going to take my shirt off.
When did you learn, Mike?
When I went to a poll one time, and I was like, people made the observation. I was like, wait, I thought I was good.
But is it pepperoni?
Who told you that you had large nipples?
Kids can be mean.
Who told you? Was it a friend of yours?
No, was it just kids at a community pool and my grandparents. I was like, oh no, and I like ran out and I was like covering them.
And then how long did it take you to bare your nipples again?
Yeah, well, like a grit of death humiliation. I thought like I'd gotten over that, but apparently nope.
No. And now you have to do it again. Don't you have to wear a singlet that will once again show your large nipples?
Yeah. I've noticed that like if there's like a hair pattern that I can put on my chest like that shades it a little bit, that it's not so bad.
It's a smart move. Yeah, you're better off shading it than doing what he did, which is essentially highlighting their size by having a hair-shaped ring around them.
Maybe he thought it would camouflage.
My favorite is Rory McIlroy tweeting, "Wake me up when it's 2017," with a link to Tiger's post. I'm Sarah Spain. He's a mean. Thanks for letting us fill in. I'll be in all next week, too. Lucky you.
You can listen to the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz, 10 to 1 Eastern on ESPN Radio, and you can watch on ESPNU.
Number 1 Alabama faces 4th-ranked Washington, followed by number 2 Clemson versus 3rd-ranked Ohio State. The College Football Playoff, New Year's Eve at 2 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.